Hi, Body Messiah. Today we're covering UBP Lesson 17, Part 2. And this lesson is titled, They Will Make Her Desolate and Naked. This is based off Revelation chapter 17, verse 16 through 17. And this is a scripture and this lesson. We already covered Part 1, but this is Part 2. But these are two lessons come and they're birthed out of a previous lesson by Surgical Bible Studies. And that previous lesson is COOH, lesson 8. Come out of her, lesson 8. As the Babylonian system falls, the beast gains strength. And as a refresher, as we said in the prior lesson, that we are reflecting on prophetic scriptures that the Most High God had given thousands of years in advance to show us and reveal to us even more of the present time, day and time that we're living in. We're living in this time where these other nations, are making her desolate. Okay? A lot of people have so many conspiracy theories that go on their mind about certain groups of people, rich elites trying to rule the world, and that is true. Okay? But always understand that the Most High God is in control. He will lift up his hand and shield of protection on people in society who don't believe and trust in him at all as a time period of testing and trial. And they have to go through that testing and trial in order to make sure to reinforce the fact that they have to trust the Most High God or cause them to turn their hearts back to him. So when you go into Revelation chapter 17, verse 16 through 17, it specifically said that they, which are those 10 nations, are going to make her desolate and naked. When you go look at COOH, lesson 8, we break down that scripture in further detail. Okay? Now, it says in the scripture, the reason why they're doing it is because God placed it in their hearts to do so. He put it on them to do so they would desire to make her desolate, make her fall, make her fail, make her naked. Okay? Almost as if they have an envious spirit towards the whore of Babylon, which is America. So go back if you want to. You can look at COOH lesson 6. It has 4 parts, and we go into Revelations in detail to reveal multiple different attributes of certain creatures that are spoken of in the Bible and what they represent today. And like I said, if you want a brief dynamic of what the whore of Babylon represents and how, and the beast, you can go to UBP, Uncovering Biblical Prophecy, lesson 14. Okay, it's about 10 minutes. Now we're going to go over, because in that lesson COOH, lesson 8, from a year ago, we talked about one of the possible ways in which they can make her desolate. And when you hear in scriptures them talking about making a land desolate or the abomination that causes desolation, you're basically depleting the land of its resources. You're making it poor. You're stripping it of everything of value, okay? You're bringing it down basically financially is one of the avenues in which they're making a land or a place desolate. And when we mentioned in the lesson from a year ago that this plague may be used to do so, we decided to break down how this is fulfillment. This is one of the ways it's used to make her desolate. And so as we go over, we're going to talk about how over time, over this year and some months, that it's being made more and more desolate. So when the plague first came out and hit, initially the governments in general throughout the world were stating that we have to wear a mask. Please wear your mask, okay? And this was on a voluntary basis, right? And then the next thing you know, masks were made mandatory, right? These are the testing of the grounds to see who are gonna, wear their mask. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against that. I wear my mask depending on the environment, every now and then. But initially it was just an ask that you wear it, and then it became mandatory. And I think also there's a testing of the waters to see which states or local governments, or how would people go about trying to enforce it. The government is testing it out to see, right? Number one, body of Messiah, when they said that this virus was airborne, to me, it meant I have to trust God even more above and beyond, because airborne means that you breathe air. So there's no way you can be 100 or 1000% sure that you can't get sick from it. Because airborne means you have to breathe air, that there's no way you can prevent this from happening. All right? So I think a lot of people are starting to think the same way. Like, really? You know what I mean? When they start trying to make it mandatory. So they also added another stipulation later. Gatherings have to be less than 50 people, right? So please make sure if you have a gathering, a social event, make sure it's less than 50 people, right? Then later it became mandatory. There were bans. They banned the gatherings that were more than 50 people, or totally had businesses locked down, mandatorily locked down, where people couldn't go inside a restaurant or what have you. And they tried their best to do it with stores, but people have to get groceries. They have to eat, right? And I'm pretty certain there's no way you're going to try to contain the number of people going in there. But there is going to be a push, a final push, when they try to incorporate the chip, the actual mark of the beast, where they're going to try to even control that, the count of the number of people, by trying to track everything everyone does, by trying to get them to accept that chip, that implant. All right? The next thing that happened, workers were forced to stay at home when they began to have lockdowns. So in the lockdowns, you told workers they can't go out, because if they work at a building that had 100, 1,000 or more people, the safest way, because this plague is breaking out and people, are dying in droves, the only way we can control it is that we tell people to stay home from the workforce, right? Which depletes Babylon even more financially, okay? And without an income, it was forcing people to rely on the government, which is extremely dangerous here, okay? Because if you're relying on them completely for every source of income, by means of to eat, sleep, or have a roof over your head, this becomes very dangerous for the latter days and fulfillment of the mark of the beast, right? So, due to these lockdowns, you had people who couldn't pay their rent or pay their mortgage. And so the government said, all right, we're going to have a moratorium on this, on whether or not an eviction moratorium where you couldn't kick people out. So now where does that put the landlords? They can't pay any monies for the property that they have, because they've locked down, people receiving payments over it. And the government said, at the stroke of a pen, that's what we're going to do, right? But once that eviction moratorium is lifted, these landlords are expecting all of these months to be paid. And the government is not hopping back saying, okay, we're going to retro pay you for all these months to help you cover your bills, since we said you had to stay at home from work. No, it's creating an atmosphere for more chaos and more a distressing time, depleting her financially of more money and causing her to be desolate. All right? And here on this one, it says, as the lockdowns are lifted, they would start adding more stipulations, right? Because now they've ran their little tests for a year, what have you. And now people are saying, I have no choice. I have to work. I have to do this. So all of a sudden, as the lockdowns are being lifted, And saying people have to get tested, they need to wear masks, they need to socially distance, they need to get traced. Contact tracing. Remember that was a big push for contact tracing? All a part of this testing ground, okay? So as soon as these lockdowns were being lifted, you will see where the pharmaceutical companies quickly came up with a so-called solution as demanded by the 45th president. So all of a sudden, in a matter of a few months, they had a solution, right? And usually it takes years. Ask people in the medical community in order for you to fully, completely feel safe about giving people this particular solution. But somehow it took months, meaning that there was already some stuff in the works, or, this is just once again going to be another test like these other options, right? Now, initially, this particular solution is voluntary, right? People should go out. Let's encourage the people. Let's do this because we believe this is a solution. We believe this will get us back to normal, right? They said they would believe it, and what have you. All of a sudden, when the 46th president is in office, he demands mandatory compliance. So now he's demanding that people will have to do this in order for us to get back to normal. So I demand and decree that you need to do this and have to do this. So there's no way to enforce this unless you got every military, every police, every type of security figure on board. But these security figures have families. They also have an intellectual brain where they can think for themselves and decide and choose also for themselves. This is not a totalitarian society yet, okay? But they're trying to push towards it. So there was really no way to continuously try and demand or make it mandatory compliance happen. So now all of a sudden, out of all this, you have where he says it's mandatory, but then you have state and local governments and even people with businesses. The businesses were locked down, and now if they have more than a certain number of employees, you're telling them, oh, if you got over, 100 employees, everybody has to. But then what if 50% of the workforce say, you must be crazy? So what does that do for that business? Even though the business is no longer on lockdown, now you have all of a sudden a shockwave hitting that business to where you don't have enough employees. So now that you don't have enough employees, you're about to work hard and overtime these other ones, but then they quit because they're tired or they're sick or they just can't do it anymore. And you're forcing these businesses to shut down, right? Thousands upon thousands shut down after the lockdown, right? The smaller ones. And now you're doing the testing grounds for these bigger businesses. All of a sudden, we have a shortage of workers, right? But now the federal court says the mandate is unconstitutional, but still most companies are ignoring that because I'm pretty sure at the higher top levels of those billionaires, they're saying, keep doing it. We're still going to demand it because now there's a shortage of workers and people already have it in their head that this should be made mandatory. And so now that there's a shortage of workers, out of those who quit and wouldn't comply, we're going to make this the standard for hiring. So now as you're hiring people, you're saying you have to have this so-called solution, one of these possible solutions, or you can't be hired. You still have the shortage of workers, continuously making her desolate and the people inside of her desolate, right? So what do we do, Body Messiah? As we're seeing this being the fresh testing ground for all of this stuff going on. Surgical Bible Study has a video, and I just want to mention it briefly, especially for the Hebrew descendants of Patriarch Abraham, especially the ancient descendants of Israel. Over a year ago, we did this video may be, could be close to 2 years old, but we talked about how this particular situation and scenario would happen in the latter half of this video. When you see from this plague, we also did statistics on the number of deaths as opposed to heart attacks or strokes or the flu or what have you, right? So we want to refresh you that you can go back here and look at it, because one of the things we have to continue to do, even during these distressing times, this lesson is Tbon, Take Back Our Narrative, Lesson 5, and it's Teach DOS, They Are Part of God's Promises. Okay? DOS, Descendants of Slaves. Now in there, I give a testimony of how, I talked to one of my sons that asked me about slavery, right? That's why it's so important and vital, based on Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 46, we never forget our heritage. There's a link to that heritage that links us to the promises that were given to Patriarch Abraham, and we should never forget that. But we also talk about in there how we see that the governments are starting to use this plague to enhance fear and increase fear amongst people in order to subjugate the population, especially Black and brown people. And Body of Messiah, we're here today at that. Now you see factions and divisions that were created where people who have taken what we call the predecessor, as opposed to those who have not taken what we call the predecessor, right? So there's divisions where even organizations, and this is not based on all of a sudden now mostly a racial thing, but it's just based on how we have what someone, I think I've heard them phrase it so beautifully, as voluntary discrimination, right? So people can choose to discriminate against someone because of what they chose to do or not to do based on their health. And Body of Messiah, let's not be a part of the division, no matter which side you choose, because we have to work together for the good for them that love the Most High God. Now, another thing I want to say to you guys and mention that is very vital in these last days is that we have to unite because this type of situation is going to intensify. It's going to intensify because they want to make her desolate and completely naked. Okay? So even though the mandates were deemed unconstitutional, there's going to be another push because they're already trying to soften up everyone's mentality and cause a demonic fear out of causing more chaos and distress financially until they can get to the point of incorporating the actual mark of the beast, which is going to be a biochip implant. We're not yet to that phase. We're not to that stage. So we still should work together for the good. Our Hebrew brothers, I've seen some of our Hebrew ministers out there make the statement and phrase it, what's going on basically, called it the matrix. And that's exactly what it is. And they're trying to encourage people, stop being divided based on politics, your religious beliefs, so much of all the stuff that is distracting you and pulling you away from working together for the good, for them that loves the Most High God. Because if you get caught up in this matrix, look, when we look at the fact, no matter what political group you call yourself belonging to, this desolation is being pushed because it's an agenda by the beast system. The whore of Babylon has no clue. She's still focused on finances and being catered to and luxuries. And she feels like, I'm not a widow, I will never grieve. Basically saying she's never going to suffer for the things that she's done. Read that in Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. She specifically is saying that while all in the background, the beast system is gaining strength and incorporating all this stuff. You see these push for cryptocurrencies and all this stuff happening because it's trying to lay the stage and pave the way for other mandatory things to happen. A Body of Messiah, One option is that we have to make sure that we focus on the Most High God. There is going to be a moment where they're going to push more stuff to cause more chaos. And there's another element of fear that I've seen that's becoming more, that has increased, been on the rise, where people are saying those who have taken any of these solutions, because there's various ones out there, they are going to have certain illnesses or even to possibly die. And I say, I don't believe that is the truth, because we're not yet, this is not the mark of the beast. I have a friend who took a solution out of fear, one of these products or whatever, out of fear. And this particular person was becoming ill, and very ill. But this particular person, what this person did was trust the Most High God even more. And humbly was like, if I've done something that I wasn't supposed to do out of fear, I trust you, and I'm going to be a living testimony as long as there's life in me. But I trust you, Most High God, if you choose to restore me completely. And the Most High God has restored this person completely. So please understand, body of Messiah, those of you who are prayer warriors, those of you Hebrew brothers that are ministers, we still have to pray for those who are destitute, those who are poor and needy and fatherless, those who are ill. And this is going to be something that might intensify because, the beast system and the whore of Babylon is steady battling against this plague that is breaking out with, I think they're up to probably there was a lambda, mu, delta, all these various variants. And you can't have a shot to cover all of them, just like the flu. You can't have a shot to cover everything. So as they keep trying to fight against it, there are going to be people who are going to be in a valley of confusion. And we have to continue to decide to pray for their well-being, and that they turn their heart more and more to the Most High God instead of freaking out and losing it and losing hope. God gave us these warnings thousands of years in advance, so we do not lose sight of Him. Trust in Him wholeheartedly. I wanted to mention another thing that I've noticed. I've been reading some comments out there when I look at other videos or begin researching stuff, and I ran across one that was so brilliant. So, like I said, there are the groups that have some people, not all of them, because like I said, I have some friends who have taken a predecessor, and we're friends still. We trust the Most High God still, okay? We've not causing ourselves to be divided at all as far as working together for the good. But there are some in the group that have taken the predecessor that are trying to villainize the ones that have not. And I ran across this quote, and it's beautiful because it shows you that there are people out there who use simple things to baffle the wise, those people who think they know it all, and they're having this solution. And it was so brilliant, I just had to share it with you guys. And it says, imagine a mass mandated product whose failure is because no one else, because of the people who didn't use it. I'm so sorry. I got distracted. But you can read this for yourself. Imagine a mass mandate product whose failure is blamed on the people who didn't use it. And I quote this person here. I don't know if this person got the quote from someone else, but this is brilliant. So keep that in mind while people are sitting there arguing back and forth on, you didn't do this, and this is the right option, and what's wrong with you? Simple things to confound the so-called wise, right? Body of Messiah, we got to consult the Most High God. There are many people preparing, because as these systems start failing, because it's on purpose, You see the shortage of different items in the grocery store. So take it upon yourself to try and grow at least 2 or 3 plants, small things, seasonal things for yourself, just in case, so you can get trained back to it. I'm going to attach a video out here where Prophet TB Joshua, prophesies about some financial distress and some of the solutions he talked about for that. And I hope you guys continue to trust the Most High God. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this lesson, and I hope you're able to join me for many, many more. And as I always say to you, may Adonai Elohim cover and surround you and your family, shield and protect you all, and envelop you all with his shalom peace. Goodbye.